If you grab your guitar right now and look at the fretboard, what do you see? Do you see chords and scales nicely laid out right in front of you? Or are you like most intermediate guitar players and you probably don't see much? As a professional guitar teacher for 17 years, I see this problem all the time, and it is really stopping many aspiring guitar players to overcome the intermediate plateau. All the scales, licks, triads, arpeggios and music theory in the world are not worth much if you can see them on the fretboard and apply it in the real-world scenarios. So in this video I'm going to give you a 5-step roadmap that will demystify the fretboard and helps you to understand fretboard visualization in a brand new way. By the end of this video you'll be able to see and play chords and scales all over the fretboard like the pros do. Let's go! So if you are still watching this video, then you are probably struggling with fretboard orientation. And that is perfectly normal. I've also struggled for years with grasping the logic of guitar fretboard. And I believe that the main reason why we struggle with it is because we learn it the wrong way. Let me explain. Traditionally, when you start exploring the fretboard, you might learn minor pentatonic and all its fingerings, or you might stumble upon cage system, or you might even start exploring the world of triads. And that is all fine and useful information, but there are two main problems with it. First, for most intermediate guitar players, all this information feels somewhat disconnected and difficult to piece together. You might know cage system and all the fingerings of minor pentatonic, but you can't put the two together. Second problem is that even if you know all the fingerings for a few scales, you still might not understand the fundamental logic behind them. So each new scale is like a new separate thing, and therefore you struggle so much with modes, for example, even though it is very simple to understand. In order to solve both of these problems, we need to start building your fretboard knowledge from the most simple piece of information there is and slowly add everything else on top of it. This way everything connects together and the logic becomes obvious. So what is the most simple piece of information, you ask? It is an octave shape, a shape connecting two root notes an octave apart. Just think about it. Every scale is just a bunch of notes connecting two root notes, chords are just notes within an octave or two, and arpeggios are just these notes spelled out in order. So step number 1 in our roadmap is to understand how octave shapes are laid out on the fretboard. No matter where I start on the fretboard, if I grab a root note of a key I want to work in, I should be able to move freely up and down. Let's take A as an example. If I start here, with A on the second fret of the G string, I should be able to move up the fretboard, no problem. So A, and so forth. And the best thing about this is that there are only two octave shapes that you need to know. If I start with my index finger on the root note on the 5th fret of the E string, which is A, then the next root note is on the 7th fret of D string. And I call this shape the R shape because the next root note is to the right side from the original one. And if I start with my middle finger or pinky on the root note, then the next root note is here on the 2nd fret of G. And I call this shape the L shape because we are moving to the left side from the original root note. Because B string is tuned differently on guitar, we need to adjust these shapes when we cross the B string, but don't let that confuse you, it is still the same shape. So the original shape looks like this, and if I start here on the 2nd fret of G string, the shape is wider, but it's still the same shape for us, okay? And that is basically all you need to know. Now I can start connecting root notes all over the fretboard with just these two shapes. Well, let's take F for example, so I start here, another F, F, and I also can go backwards, right? So if you're struggling with this, you need to start working on this first because it is the backbone of this whole system. I won't go more into depth about this. I made a whole video about it a while ago, so you can check it out. Link is in the description box below, and there is also a link to the PDF with all the diagrams that you are gonna see today. Okay, so now that I have all these root notes visible on the fretboard, I can start to add information on top of it. And we want to start with the most important scales for any guitarist, and that is minor and major pentatonic. I believe that these two are most important because they create a basic framework that we can later expand. So step number 2 in our roadmap is minor and major pentatonic. Your goal here is to be able to start on any root note wherever on the fretboard and without hesitation play minor or major pentatonic. If I start here with my index finger on the 5th fret of E string, I should be able to play A major or A minor. And as you can see, this is all based around the octave shape that we just talked about. So if I see this octave shape, I can fill it with A major pentatonic or A minor pentatonic. If I start with my ring finger here on the root note, I should be able to do the same. So again, this is based around the L shape. And now I can play major pentatonic or minor pentatonic. I hope you can see how all this connects nicely together. I see an octave shape and then I can fill it with a scale. So it's octave shapes and on top of it there are scales. And if I did my homework correctly, I should be able to do this starting on any root note on the fretboard. So if I start on 7th fret of D string, where is A, I can visualize the octave shape and then I can play A major or I can play A minor. If you can do this, you are already ahead of 90% of intermediate guitar players. Once this becomes second nature, fretboard opens up really nicely for you. The system works because it is very simple and easy to understand, and at any given moment you have basically only two options where to go. Either you go to the right or to the left. And it gives you confidence that whatever key you play in, you just need to find your first root note, and from there it should be quite easy. But we can take it even further. Step number 3 in our roadmap is natural minor and major scale. Again, two very important scales for any guitarist. The nice thing is that we just need to add 2 more notes to our existing framework and we are done. If I take A major pentatonic right here, all I need to do is add D and G sharp and voila, natural major scale is done. And again, if I do the same starting with pinky or ring finger right here, I see octave shape, I see major pentatonic, and then I add the note D and G sharp, and that is A major. And the best thing about guitar is that I don't have to worry about how this would look like if I had to play in some weird key like E flat, for example. I just take the same fingering, so E flat is here, and play the same thing. Isn't that wonderful? We are learning to play in all 12 keys at the same time. And of course we need to do the same for natural minor scale. We take A minor pentatonic as our basic framework. Now I add notes B and F and I have natural minor scale. Okay? And again, your homework is to be able to start on any root note wherever on the fretboard and play minor and major natural scale from there. So if I start here, this is A, I can play major, I can play minor. And I still see this R shape, octave shape, right? And please take your time here. There is no reason to rush this process. Do it every day for a few minutes, and in a few months, your fretboard visualization will be far ahead from where you are right now. And again, a reminder, if you need all the diagrams that you see on the screen today, you can download PDF in the description box below. On to the next step. So far we have covered all the most important scales that any guitarist might need. Now to make this complete, we need to start adding chords into this framework. You want to have your scales connected to chords and vice versa. And we need to start with the most important chord in any key, and that is the tonic chord. A chord that is built on the first degree of any scale. So let's start with the key of A major. Again, we want to add the tonic chord to each fingering of major scale that we did in the previous step. This way I can easily connect the two. If you know cage system, this is kind of it, but organized in a more useful way. So if I start with this fingering, I can see this A chord. That is probably obvious, right? Now I need to do this for all the other fingerings. So if I start on E string again, but play this shape, now I see this A major, which is like traditionally it would be called G shape, but we don't really need to bother with the names of the shapes. If it helps you, then it's all good, but it is not necessary. You just connect the scale with the chord. So this is the scale, and this is the chord. And the same works for minor scale and minor shape. So if I have minor scale here, I see A minor here. If I have A minor scale here, then I see this A minor. I know this might seem like a lot of work, and it is, but bear in mind that you are building all these only once. If you do this correctly, you will never get lost on the fretboard again. And whatever scale or chord you will decide to learn in the future, you can always put it on top of this system. It is very powerful. So again, what you want to do is to fill every shape of a scale with a chord. So if I do this for A major, for example, this is A major here, so it works for this scale. If I have this shape, this is my A major. If I want to fill this scale shape, this is my A major. This is A major for this shape. And then we are here. Okay? And now to the last step of our roadmap. Be aware that if you are struggling with octave shapes right now, this might get a little bit too advanced for you, so take your time to get here. If I am in the key of A major or A minor, it is super useful to know all the other chords that are in this key. So step number 5 is to know all 7 chords in any key. The important thing here is to find all the chords in the same position as is the scale, so you can easily see how the chords fit the scale. And it becomes very useful once you start targeting chord tones in your solos. To figure out chords in any major key, you need to remember the formula major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. What that means is that the chord on the first scale degree is going to be major chord, on second and third degree we have minor chord, fourth and fifth degree are major chords, sixth degree is minor chord, and seventh degree is diminished. So if I take this basic shape of A major, I can start building chords on each scale degree. So A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, G sharp half diminished, and again A major. I use this 7th chord, G sharp half diminished, instead of the G sharp diminished, which should be there, but this one is more useful in the real context and also more playable. So again, if I start with this shape of the scale, some of those chords will be the same. And it doesn't really matter if for this shape you visualize this chord or if you visualize this partial shape. It is still the same chord, right? But I do prefer to see the shapes that fit the scale more, okay? So if I start here, this is my A major, this is my B minor, so this is the G shape of B minor, but I don't visualize this part, but this part. Then I have C sharp minor, so it is the same. I have D, or I can see this D. So again, it's the same, but just partial shape. Then I have E. Then I have F sharp minor, G sharp half diminished, and A again. In the PDF below you can find all the chords in all the positions that I like to visualize. And the same thing of course works for any minor key, I just need to remember a different formula. This time it is minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major, major. So if I do this in the basic position, I start with my minor scale and then I can start building chords. So A minor, again B half diminished, C major, D minor, E minor, I can do this shape, or I like this shape from Shape of My Heart. Okay, so that's E minor. Then I have F major, G major, and again A minor. If you can do all 5 steps, then your fretboard knowledge is pretty damn good. If not, just start wherever you are and slowly start working through the steps. I hope this video gave you a pretty good overview of what are the exact steps that you should take. If you are not sure where to start, this video should help.